After 4 years of business school, I went out and I went for the American dream. I bought a Subway sandwich shop. Oh yeah. You're all impressed, I can tell. I don't want to brag or anything, but in 6 short months, I took a $60,000 debt, and I doubled that debt.
King Darren, your subjects would like to hear a few words from you.
Why do great stories matter? Everybody loves stories. It's a story. Isn't that good enough? I mean, whether you're reading a book, sending an email, or giving a great story from the stage, why does it matter? Here's 7 reasons why great stories matter. Is that for you and I as a presenter, they're the heart of what we do. An average storyteller is considered an average presenter. A good storyteller is a good presenter. A great storyteller is a great presenter. Stories matter. You might have heard the old adage from Bill Gove, great speaker coach, who says, all speaking is tell a story, make a point. Tell another story, make another point. Tell another story, make another point. Stories matter. In fact, I was on the Skype call today with a client in the Ukraine. And they're engineers, and he was talking about how their presentations are boring because they love numbers, and numbers are their stories, but even your numbers have to tell a great story. And he was telling me that their presentations are good, they're informational, but they're boring because they lack stories. So, great stories, great presentation. They're the heart of what we do. You might have heard it before, but understand that means you need to focus. The number 2 reason great stories matter: confidence. Confidence. When you're on stage and you know you're approaching a great story in your structure of your presentation, all of a sudden you'll gain more confidence. You know this works. When you're in front of a good audience, it's going to take the energy even higher. When you're in front of a horrible audience, it becomes your saving grace. Because you know you've worked out this story and it works every time, and you keep working on it, it keeps getting better. Early on in my career, I used to do stand-up comedy in between music acts at a local nightclub. It was horrible. Trust me, you don't want to do that. But I remember one of the musicians said to me, "How do you go up there? I have my instrument I can hide behind. How do you go up there with nothing?" But see, that's the key. It's not nothing. I had my great jokes. When I'm on stage, I have my great stories. I remember an analogy from my comedy mentor, Dave Fitzgerald. He said, you're walking up there with your gun belt on, and you've got your ammo, you've got your little bullets, they're your good jokes, your good stories, and then you've got your hand grenades. You know, you can toss one of those and boom, you own the room. So you're not alone. But great stories give you great confidence. The 3rd reason, relatability. Great stories matter because they're relatable. I felt that before. I know how you feel. Wow. I remember when that happened to me. Oh my gosh. I know what you're saying. David Brooks, the 1990 world champion, said this. He said, we all have different stories, but we all share the same 7 emotions. See, it's those emotions that connect us with the audience, that makes it relatable. Sometimes you may hear this fantastic story, or you in front of a speaker and they have this story where they on an iceberg and they had to cut their arm off and chew their toenails down, and you think, wow, I wish that happened to me. No, you don't. You don't want a sensational story like that. In fact, Mark Brown, 1995 world champion, says, your stories don't have to be sensational, they only have to be sincere. Why? Because when they're sincere, they're relatable. And if you can give us a new perspective, your story is great. So number 4, be likable. Great stories make you likable. Who doesn't want to be liked? Okay, so this one kind of appeals to your ego, but it's the truth. The better stories you tell, the more likable you are. You never want to be that person at the party when people think, oh, they're going to tell that story. No, you want to be the person where they say, hey, Tell them that time well, there's a big difference between a great story and a story that's okay or average. But great stories make you likable. Average stories, not so much. I remember when I was driving down the road listening to Brian Tracy, and he asked that question, what would you dare to dream if you knew you wouldn't fail? And when I really got to the heart of why comedian popped into my head, it's because when I was growing up, my brother and cousin were always making people laugh and telling funny stories, and they were likable. Everybody liked them. Everybody wanted them to say more. And I remember I was a little jealous of that, and I honestly wanted that. But great stories make you likable. And the number 5 reason why stories really matter, why great stories matter, they're memorable. Memorable! Great stories matter because they're memorable. If you want to be invited back, if you want your message to stay in the hearts and the minds of your audience members, they've got to be great in order to be memorable. I remember hearing a story from Dave Fitzgerald, a comedy mentor of mine. I've mentioned him. But he told me that when he used to be a speaker in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that he literally would have people in the back of the room sworn and told by the judges they had to be there. They didn't want to be, with crossed arms. But because Dave was funny, he could see that they would slowly uncross their arms and open up and listen. See, that great story helped me remember the power of humor in getting people to engage with you and uncross their arms. In the next video, I'm going to go in deeper detail as to why and how to do that. So make sure you check out the next video. But no matter what, remember, it's being memorable why great stories matter. They get passed along. Here in Las Vegas, there's a place called Red Rock Canyon, and they have petroglyphs there that you can see. And what these petroglyphs are stone writings, stories carved in stone, to be passed along and take wisdom and give it to the next generation. In fact, it doesn't matter what religion you are. I'm sure you've heard of the man named Jesus. Now, whether you believe or don't believe, you've got to know that Jesus did not use PowerPoint. He used parables. What's a parable? A great metaphor, a great story that gets passed along. To take an idea or a concept, package it, and pass it over to somebody else. Stories are in our DNA. We're trained to love stories and want to hear great stories, not boring ones. I'm standing here in front of this tumbleweed that at a certain point, wind takes it away and it just keeps rolling along, just like your great stories. Number 7, great stories drive personal change. There's a big difference between a cute story for entertainment or a perspective-changing story. See, that's why people come to us, for that self-development aspect. That's why they need and love and want those stories. You probably heard of my Subway failure story, and I remember at that time in my life, I was so mad at everybody else and the landlord, the franchise. I was frustrated with everybody. I blamed everybody. I heard this great story from Jim Rohn. He tells this story of one of his mentors had asked him to write out a list of all the reasons he wasn't successful. And so he handed it to his mentor the next morning and he said, "Jim, there's one problem. Your name ain't on it." Wow. He had the same challenge. I could relate, relatable. But it helped change my perspective, and I took responsibility, realized I chose the franchise, I chose the location. I chose to ignore some important points that I was taught in Subway school. Great stories drive personal change. That's why they have to be great. It matters. That's why great stories matter. But I want to know from you, did I miss one? Do you have a different reason of why great stories matter? Or maybe you have an example of one of the ones that I talked about. Or maybe you got a question about storytelling. Please comment below. I'll jump on and try and answer any questions you have about great storytelling.